Well, hello, and welcome to day 11 of these examples of Christian discipleship. And today I'm talking about a man called Brother Andrew. I I haven't been able to find his real name yet, so Brother Andrew it is. But that's how he was known to us who grew up in that era when a large chunk of Eastern Europe and Asia were the Soviet Union, the communist bloc. And I want to read a bit of Brother Andrew's story. In 1955, a young Dutch missionary went to a communist youth congress in Poland, at that time a part of the Soviet bloc. But he wasn't a communist, he was a Christian. His suitcase contained his Bible, a change of clothes, and hundreds of tracts entitled The Way of Salvation, which he intended to give away. The trip was to change his life. Behind the Iron Curtain, he discovered churches desperately in need of Bibles, support, and prayer. Above all, he found a group of Christians who felt isolated and alone, who thought the rest of the world had forgotten them. One evening during that first visit, he went to a Baptist church in Warsaw in Poland, where he was invited to speak. He tells the story in his best-selling book, God's Smuggler. At the end of my little talk, the pastor said the most interesting thing of all. Quote, "We want to thank you," he said, "for being here. Even if you had not said a word, just seeing you would have meant so much. We feel at times as if we are all alone in our struggle." End of quote. That young man became known as Brother Andrew, and his trip changed the world. And from then on, Brother Andrew began getting Bibles and other Christian literature through to the Soviet Union. And his book's entitled God's Smuggler because he smuggled the Bibles in. And he took tremendous risk, as did other volunteers working alongside him, but he was the inspiration. He took amazing risks, hiding Bibles in the underneath of his car and in all sorts of places, as well as his luggage, just to get them through. And of course, he used to take them in personally. It wasn't a matter of posting them. And it was really interesting. Where was it? I was reading about. He was recognised in his own country, knighted, the equivalent of a knighthood in the Netherlands, and he received other awards. But it says here, but perhaps the recognition that pleases him most is copies of the KGB reports. The KGB was the secret police in the Soviet Union. KGB reports, which he obtained after the fall of the Iron Curtain, the communist countries, the Soviet Union broke up. There were more than 150 pages about him in the KGB report, detailing his work in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. They knew a lot about Brother Andrew, and yet still they were not able to stop his work. I remember a story that, repeated hundreds of times, I'm sure, that as he came to a border post, he would pray to God that he would blind the eyes of the guards, the border guards, to the Bibles that he had hidden in his vehicle or his luggage. And that prayer was always answered. Of course, communism fell, and there are other regimes now that Christians are persecuted under, in Muslim countries, in China, in many so-called capitalist free countries. Christians are persecuted for being Christians in South Africa. They used to be persecuted before the end of apartheid. And Brother Andrew's small Dutch missionary agency became an organization called Open Doors. And Open Doors now works in over 60 countries, supporting Christians who, without that support, would feel cut off from other Christians around the world. He took risks, but his faith called him to take risks. God called him to show this support in such a practical way to the churches struggling under persecution. A great example of a disciple who took risks and who sacrificed so much of his life to help those in need of hearing God's word.